2D measurement with algebra, and the area of regular shapes. Remember that area talks about when something is being covered. So if you go to the store and you want to buy carpet for your house, they sell it by the square unit. They want to know how much of the floor you're covering. So you need to go in with the area. The same thing happens when you go to the landscape store and you want to put grass down in your backyard. They sell it to you by square unit and they want to know how much you're covering. We know already several formulas for area, and the one we know the best is probably the area of a rectangle, and that's just length times width. Now, if we wanted to find the area of a square, we need to remember that a square is a special case of a rectangle where all four sides are equal, so it's just L times L, and remember to write it as a power, it would be length squared. So I don't have to memorize two formulas. I need the area formula for a rectangle. Now a triangle, I can relate to a rectangle because if I draw a diagonal line from this corner of the rectangle all the way to this corner, I've split my triangle in half. So the area is length times width divided by 2. More commonly though, we consider this to be the base and the height. And we have to remember that the base and height of a triangle must meet at a 90-degree angle. Area of a circle, area equals pi r squared. Area of a trapezoid is a little more complicated to get the complete formula. But we can do part of it very easily just based on what we know. Area of a trapezoid, I've got a rectangle here, and I've got two triangles that are exactly the same. If I look at the area of the rectangle, it's pretty straightforward. It's A times H. The area of the triangle is base times height over 2. Well, what is this base right here? And what's the base right here? This whole distance across is B, but that's not the base of my triangle. The distance from here to here is A. So this distance from here to here and this distance from here to here add up to B, or sorry, is the difference between B and A, and I have to share it. And these two triangles will be exactly the same. So if I look, I've got base B minus A, divided by 2 for that value. So the area of the triangle is B minus A over 2 times height, all divided by 2. And I could even have written this with the height in front. It doesn't really matter. So if I look at the next slide, that's really what I've started with here. So when I'm looking at the two triangles, this is really cluttered, and I don't like looking at my divide by 2 that way. So I generally rewrite it like this so I can see the 2 after. And I can remember that divide by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by a half, and I can multiply straight across because H is the same as H over 1. So I've ended up with H times B minus A all over 4. So the overall area of the trapezoid, I had one rectangle and two triangles. So if I add up the area of the rectangle, which was AH, and I add one triangle and a second triangle, I've really got 2H times 2, sorry, 2 areas of triangle is 2 times H times B minus A over 4, which is how this turned into this line. And I can reduce the 2 and the 4 because they're both divisible by 2. And that's probably as far as we can get at this point in time with the equation of the area of a trapezoid. There's a lot of other math that happens in here that we have not done yet. We could possibly decide that, oh yes, I know I can find a common denominator to add them. I'm going to times the bottom and the top both by 2. So I get 2AH over 2 plus H times B minus A. And once we get here, there's some math that we're going to see over the next couple of days that's going to help us expand it and simplify it and rewrite it to get the formula for the area of a trapezoid that we've seen in the past. This, however, is really as far as I would expect you to be able to get at this stage. What's the formula for the area of a trapezoid? We're going to move on to an example. Susan has an odd backyard and would like to enclose a portion of it as a dog run and resod it. It's the same diagram we had the other day, and we're going to determine how much sod she will require. She wants to resod it. Resodding. Well, that means we're going to cover. And that means we're looking for area. Okay, let's keep going. Determine how much sod she will require. How much sod? That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for area. That's great. Area is base times height over 2. I need my base and my height, and they cross, at a 90-degree angle. That means I need x for my base, and my height, 7.3. So as far as I can go right now is base times 7.3 divided by 2. I know 2 sides in a right triangle. I know what that tells me to use. It tells me to use my good friend, the Pythagorean theorem. And the first thing I need to do is locate my hypotenuse. So I find my right angle, which is right here. I'm going to draw a line straight across, and 9.5 is my hypotenuse. So I can just go off to the side and do some calculations. 9.5 squared is 7.3 squared plus x squared, and that's 90.25 equals, I don't remember. I'm going to cheat. I have it all written out here. Oh, we talked about that already. We've talked about that. Oh, good. Here's the numbers. So 7.3 squared with my handy dandy calculator gives me 53.29, and I want to get x squared by itself. In order to do that, I need to subtract 53.29 from both sides in order to keep my equation balanced. And once I do that, I find out that x squared is 36.96. And in order to isolate for x now, I need to take the square root of both sides. And once I take the square root, I've got this long number that doesn't stop. And because we have this long, ugly number that continues on and on forever on my calculator screen, I have to remember to put my dot above. And I rounded it to 6.1. However, when I'm actually using this calculation for my area, I want to go back and use that value. Okay, so x was just the missing side of my triangle, wasn't it? And if I go back to where I started here, area, the base was root 36 point, I've forgotten already, sorry guys, 36.96 times the height, which is 7.3, divided by 2. Okay, so I'm just going to substitute that number in with the square root sign so I use an exact value when I calculate on my calculator. And then I get 44.3801. Sorry, I forgot the dot there. I divide by 2. And I have to round up because if I'm buying something and I have to cover it, proper rounding shouldn't apply here because I have to consider the context that I'm doing this with. If I'm putting grass down in the yard, if I don't cover all of it, if I don't round up to 23, I'm not going to be able to cover all of it. If I round it down to 22 meters squared, like I would if I was rounding appropriately using proper rounding conventions, in this context, it doesn't make sense because I won't have enough grass. And before class tomorrow, please do pages 6 to 7, area of regular and composite shapes, questions 1, 2, 3, and 4.